Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to course 6 of ACI Foundation courses on the Diamond Cutter Sutra. We're about to do class 8 of 10. Today we're going to talk about emptiness and paradise and purification. But before we do that, let's take a moment and become re-familiar with our motivation for taking this course. Why is it that we want to understand about emptiness? What can we do with that wisdom? How can we benefit not only ourselves, but others? You make your motivation as clear and as heartfelt as you can. And then if you would like to join me in doing prayers, please do. Sashi Puki Jukshin Me Tok Tram Vira Blinchi Nyinde Gempadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Yowargi Jokun Namdak Shingla Juparsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Dayami. Sangye Charan Soki Chaknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kapsu Chi Daki Chinshe Kipe Sanam Ki Jola Pinchir Sangye Chuparsho Sangye Charan Soki Chaknam La Changchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Chashe Kipe Sunam Ki Jola Pinchir Sangye Chuparsho Sangye Chudan Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Chashe Kipe Sunam Ki Jola Pinchir Sangye Chuparsho. So before I pick up again, there's a bit from class 7 that I still need to cover this morning. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions? Um, Thank you for asking. I think that the question is, could she ask a question not about this course? I prefer to keep it to this course, and then, but do feel free to ask me in Telegram. Happy to chat. Okay, we have a bunch of emptiness wizards here today. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's go back to the end of class 7. So we were talking about um, we were talking about the uh, the fourth path of the 5 paths, the path of habituation, right? And that we use the path of habituation uh, to reach the state of becoming an arhat, of being an arhat, one who is in nirvana. And we ended up talking about uh, the circle of 3 that an arhat uh, thinks about themselves, right? Um, they think that they themselves uh, are an arhat, but not from their own side, right? The Buddha who gives the prediction to them about when they'll reach total enlightenment, uh, that Buddha does not exist from their own side. The act of giving the prediction doesn't exist itself. So now I'll talk about the relationship between seeing emptiness directly and getting rid of mental afflictions. So when we reach the 8th level, the 8th bodhisattva level of the 10, um, while we're still on the 4th path out of 5, two things happen. The first is that basically we'll have no more mental afflictions. The definition of, let's see, I didn't pull up my Tibetan. One moment. Nope, that's not it. Sorry. So sorry. There it is. Okay. Okay, there we go. So the definition of nirvana is Nyunjuk Malupar Pampe Sosor Tangok. And I think we did talk about this before, but I'm not remember exactly which class that was. Nyunjuk Malupa, that means Nyundrups, those are our mental afflictions. And Malupa means that we abandon them. So we've abandoned our negative emotions permanently. And then it's not just that we've abandoned negative emotions, but sosor tangok. We brought that about through what they call individual analysis. And that individual analysis is the code word referring to the second half of the path of seeing, where we come out of the direct perception of emptiness, and then we have the four Arya truths. So they call those four Arya truths that a brand new Arya experiences. They call that individual analysis. So there's obviously a relationship between seeing emptiness directly and removing all mental afflictions. So that's actually a part of the definition of nirvana, is the relation, the mention of the second half of the path of seeing, which of course is brought about by the first half of the path of seeing, the direct perception of emptiness. So we've, let's put ourselves there. We've seen emptiness directly. We've had this experience of the four Arya truths, the truth of suffering, the truth of a cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the path to the end of suffering. So we have that wisdom, that realization, those realizations. And now what do we do? Does that mean that like the rest of our lives, we've seen when it is we're going to become enlightened? Does that mean the rest of our time before we become enlightened is going to be all, what do they call it? Puppy dogs and rainbows? Like everything is going to be happiness and bliss? We'll never feel pain again. We'll never feel anguish again. No, it doesn't. And so now the Diamond Cutter Sutra, the Buddhist starts talking about, he actually gives us an example from one of his past lives, and of being on the fourth path, of being on the path of habituation, of practicing with this wisdom and realizations of emptiness. And this story is called The King of Kalinka. Kalinke Gyalpo. Kalinke Gyalpo. So this is just a Sanskritized Tibetan. Kalinka. It's just, they're just phonetically sounding out what the Sanskrit word is in Tibetan characters. Kalinka. So anyway, this is Kalinka. That's a place or an area that used to exist in ancient India. And then Gyalpo means king. King. So at that time, long ago, there was a monk, and his name was Supama. Supama. Which means, supa, if you recognize, that's the word we use for not getting angry or for patience. And ma means to speak. So there was a monk who was in this area, in the king's area, in the forest, meditating. And the king's wife was out with her retinue taking a horse ride through the forest. And she comes upon Supama. And she's wondering why he's there and what he's doing. So she starts to talk with him. And I mean, we can imagine that he does not get upset because she disturbed his meditation. But she's talking with him. He's sharing with her the teaching. She's very interested in what she's learning from him. It's all very respectful. The king has decided to go out and go hunting. So he and his attendants are out with their bows and arrows, or maybe they must have been using large knives to go hunting with. Maybe they were hunting for pigs or something. I don't know. So they come through the forest, and the king sees there's his wife talking with this man, and he becomes extremely jealous and very, very angry. And here's how the Diamond Cutter Sutra tells the story. Subhuti, there was a time when the king of Kalinka was cutting off the larger limbs and smaller appendages of my body. At that moment, there came into my mind no conception of a self, nor of a sentient being, nor of a living being, nor of a person. I had no conception at all. But neither did I not have any conception. So the king of Kalinka has gotten down off of his horse, and he's held down the monk, Supama, and he's starting to chop away at his body because he thinks something untoward, something inappropriate is going on between that monk and his wife. And he starts chopping away his fingers and his hands and his arms and his toes and his legs, and cutting all the pieces off of him. And so the Buddha has told us that while this is going on, he has no conception at all. But he also doesn't not have a conception. So we know from previous verses that we've talked about, when he says that he had no conception of a self or of a living being or of a person, or of a living being over their life, I think these four things that we've talked about before, what they mean, that he had no conception that any of it was self-existent. He had no conception that he existed independent of how he was perceiving himself at that moment while he's being chopped up. He had no conception of, oh, my fingers that are being chopped off right now, they don't exist independent of my projections. So while all this is going on, he did not get angry. He did not fight back. So anger is rooted in misunderstanding. The mental affliction of anger, the negative emotion of anger, stems from misunderstanding. If we have wisdom in our mind, it's impossible for a negative emotion to arise. The mind can't hold two objects at the same time. So if the mind is filled with wisdom, anger cannot arise. So it's not that when we reach the state of being an arhat on the bodhisattva path, the 8th level of the bodhisattva path, it's not that we no longer have pain, that we no longer have suffering. I don't know about that last one. Forget I said that. Because the Buddha, when he was a bodhisattva, when he was the monk, Supama, he was experiencing pain, physical pain, no doubt. But he wasn't suffering. So we can still feel pain. But what we do on the 4th path, the path of habituation, is that we are using our wisdom to basically, and we're going to talk about this more in the class 8 content, to basically be purifying our negativities. And we'll talk more about that. So again, from the Diamond Cutter Sutra, because long ago there was a time, O Subhuti, when the king of Kalinka got the evil suspicion that I had engaged in relations with his woman. And so he was cutting off the larger limbs and the smaller appendages, like fingers. of my body. So now we're into actually Chuni Lama Drapa Shedrup's commentary on the Dhammapada Sutra. At that moment, I practiced patience, keeping my mind on an understanding of the lack of true existence to each of the three elements of the act of patience. As I focused on the me, which exists nominally, there came into my mind no conception where I held any belief in some truly existing me. And so I had no conception of anything from a truly existent self up to a truly existent person. So there he's got, so Chuni Lama is explaining, like filling out the Buddha's speech from the Dhammapada Sutra of what he means when he says he had no conception of a person of the four things, And we talked about the four things before, that self, no conception of a self means no conception of me. No conception of a sentient being or living being means no conception of a mine, my fingers. Particularly in this case, my arm, my body. No conception of a life means the self over the course of a lifetime. I mean, he was definitely observing that particular life coming to an end, right? So the idea of a life was probably in his mind. And then no conception of a person, meaning no conception of a person who's born over and over and over again. So he didn't have any of those four perceptions self-existently, but he obviously had those four perceptions. He saw himself, getting his fingers that he had his whole life, and that he was the person who was going to be reborn because he's coming to the end of his life. So he obviously had a perception of all those four things, but he didn't see any of them as existing independent of his own projections. So he was thinking, if we go back to, we talked about on the path of accumulation, where we see dependent arising, we see, like we have the experience of seeing our karmic seeds ripen into what it is that we experience. And we talked about dunshis, and we talked about rikshis and dunshis. And dunshis were those mental images that they are mental images of something that we have had a direct experience of. Remember? So he was having dunshis. He was having these mental images of what he had directly perceived. He knew that what was going on, that his perception of all of this was valid, that he's doing the projecting. The experience is valid in the sense that, there's blood spurting out all over the place, and his fingers are becoming shorter and shorter. And he knew that that mental image was the ripening of karmic seeds that he had planted with his own actions that he had done in the past. That these projections, this mental image was forced on him by the ripening of those karmic seeds. So in that moment, if you have this kind of wisdom in your mind about the whole experience, the circle of three, the four parts, the emptiness of the self, of me, of mine, of me over my lifetime, of me as someone who's going to be reborn. If you're seeing, and the experience of this is a projection, a mental image forced on me by my past karma, the last thing you would think to do with that kind of wisdom in your mind is to strike back, is to have anger. Because you know that were you to do so, you would only be creating future pain for yourself. So, can we say that, after we have the direct perception of emptiness and we realize the four Arya truths, that we're going to have experiences of the nature of what the monk Supama experienced? Is it going to be that horrible? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what seeds I have in my past, so I certainly can't say with any certainty what seeds other people have. I do wish that they ripen as the very smallest pains possible for you, but they are going to ripen as pains. So this part of the path is not like puppy dogs and rainbows. This part of the path, we are purifying our negativities with our wisdom. Chuni Lama continues on. At that moment, I had no conception at all of any conception that something was existing truly. At the same time, though, it was neither as if I had no other nominal conceptions at all. And what Shinidrakpa Shedrup says is, what the Buddha is saying here is, I did have the thought that I would have to keep my patience. I did have the thought to take the pain on willingly and not to be upset about the harm being done to me. And I did have the kind of conception, the kind of thought where I reconfirmed my knowledge of how I had perceived that no existing object has any true existence. So Chuni Lama is explaining to us that, because we've seen emptiness directly. I mean, hold on one second. We know from where we are right now, if you're like me, we have to kind of work hard or be very particular about our practice in keeping wisdom at the forefront. Like if someone starts yelling at us at work, there's like a period of time before we remember wisdom, right? Like we're getting yelled at and we start to feel this me. Oh, I don't deserve this. Why are they yelling at me? I didn't do anything. Oh, I did do something. I did cause this. So there's like this gap before the wisdom kicks in. Once we have seen emptiness directly, this wisdom, we become a being who basically is this wisdom. This wisdom is like part of us. So as people yell at us, as people try to cut up our body into little bits, it doesn't, we don't wait. We just know. We know. This is my karma ripening. None of this, me, the person who's yelling at me, the actual yelling, none of it has any existence from its own side. This is these perceptions I'm having are coming from my seeds ripening into these perceptions. I'm forced to see these perceptions. So we use the fourth path to willingly take on, willingly experience our karma ripening, meaning we stop fighting back. We stop trying to push reality away from us. We stop fighting with things as they are. Does that mean we want to put ourselves in situations where we would get harmed? No, no, no. It doesn't mean that at all. We still have a precious life. And we shouldn't put ourselves in danger. We still have ways we can benefit others with this life, which is becoming habituated to what we saw in our practice. So when we understand emptiness, and by understand, I mean, if we realized emptiness, if the wisdom that understands emptiness was like part of us and not just a thought or an intellectual understanding, we'll be able to just clear away these mental afflictions. We become more and more adept, let's say, more skilled at just clearing away these mental afflictions. That wisdom is the nyempo. It's an antidote. It's the ultimate antidote. So that's how we get rid of our negative emotions. So when we talk about the mind of an arhat, and we talk about the emptiness of the mind of an arhat, the emptiness of the mind of a person who has permanently destroyed all mental afflictions because of having seen emptiness directly. What do we say about that? That mind doesn't exist independent of how the arhat is projecting that mind. That the arhat is projecting a mind completely free of mental afflictions. When they think, consider their mind. That mind that is at peace, total peace, exists dependent upon the projections of it being at total peace. There's another way we've talked about the parts of a person in terms of like body and mind before. There's another way to think about parts, and that is like the parts of a person over time. So there is, for example, there's the Kim Lon of an hour ago, and the Kim Lon now, and then we can project the Kim Lon in the future, right? We can. Does the Kim Lon of an hour ago, does she exist now in this moment? No, that Kim Lon is gone already. She doesn't exist now. Does the Kim Lon of her future Buddhahood, let's say she's not enlightened. I don't know that she's not, but let's say she's not yet enlightened. Is the Kim Lon of on the day of her enlightenment, does she exist now? No. So there's really only this current moment of Kim Lon. Did she exist an hour ago? I mean, yes, we can. I didn't see her an hour ago, but I can presume that she did because she's here now, and she's not a newly born infant. So she must have existed an hour ago. So there's we can think about Kim Lon as existing over moments of time. I don't know what year she was born, but we can just divide it up. I don't want to presume anything, but we can divide those. There's the Kim Lon of the first year, the second year, the third year, the fourth year. And we can take all those indications and we can collect them together, and we can call them Kim Lone. So the prediction, the final prediction that the Buddha gives, remember we talked about that last time. Does that Kim Lone exist? The one who receives the prediction, which she will most definitely. We all will receive the prediction. But can we say now that the Kim Lone who's received a prediction, does she exist now? But we can talk about the life of Kim Lone, and that life of Kim Lone will include the part of Kim Lone that is the Kim Lone who receives the final prediction. So just a different way we can think about parts. Another way of talking about dependent origination, of how it is that Utpala exists, appears. Okay, so that was the end of class 7. So now we'll see how I do with doing class 8 in, I have to go in double time, I guess. Any quick question about using emptiness on the fourth path? We are going to talk more about it in this next class, which we're just about to start. Okay. Okay, so now we're moving on to emptiness and paradises. So we're at the point now in the Dhammapada Sutra when the Buddha says, hey, Subhuti, what do you think? If you go to a bodhisattva and they're meditating, and you ask them, what are you doing? And they respond, oh, I'm trying to create my Buddha paradise. I'm creating my Buddha paradise. And the Buddha asks Subhuti, oh no, he doesn't ask. He says, any bodhisattva who says that is not speaking true. Which means we're getting used to his language now, which means what? If someone's not speaking true, they're speaking nominally, right? If the bodhisattva had responded saying, I'm working on producing a paradise for myself, which is self-existent, independent of my projections, that's not speaking true, right? If they had said, oh, I'm working on a paradise that will be the result of the seeds I plant and nothing more, then that sounds correct, doesn't it? So when the Buddha says not speaking true, it means, on the one hand, nominally or in name only, but it also means not speaking truly in the sense of true existence from the object's own side. Even the words that the Bodhisattva says, I'm working to create my own paradise, those words, we only understand those words because we are projecting what those words are. We are projecting understanding of those words. Those quote unquote words are just like this. They don't exist from their own side. They have no meaning from their own side. Arya Nagarjuna said that what we call words are just sounds. That we're perceiving with our ear sense power. They don't have their own meaning. With that in mind, let's talk about some words. Dakpe Shinkam. Say Dakpe, Shing, low tone SH sound because of this character here. Shing, Kam. Dakpe Shinkam. The abbreviation, which is a common abbreviation, is Dak Shing. So we're just getting rid of the pei and the kam. Dak Shing. And Dak Shing is comprised of the word Dakpa, which means pure. Pure. And Shing Kam means realm. So Dakpe Shing Kam is a pure realm. Shing is a word for a field, like a farmer's field. So it's a pure field, a pure realm, Buddha paradise. There are lots of different Buddha paradises. There's, for example, Ganden, Okmin, Sangye Kishin, Sangye Kitsa. There are lots of different names. So there are different Buddha paradises. And we're going to talk now about how Maitreya, the future Buddha, right? So how Maitreya creates his Dakpe Shinkan, how Maitreya creates his Buddha paradise. And then we're going to talk about purification. So, creating paradise, there are a number of steps. Should we call them steps? There are a number of experiences that Maitreya will have as he becomes enlightened. Because that's really what we're talking about, is what is it like in those final moments of transitioning from what we call a sentient being, but a still a realized being, right? An arhat and an arya are realized beings, but they're not totally enlightened beings. They're still at the form of having, this pile of skin and bones. This particular life that they're in. They're still in that life. So anyway, the first experience is that Maitreya, let me give you the word for that. Sipa Tame Jungsem. That's the phrase for a bodhisattva at the final moment of their non-Buddhahood, the final moment of their samsaric existence. Sipa is a word, it means life, but it's a synonym for samsara, synonym for korwa, which is another word for samsara. Sipe korlo, that's the wheel of life. And we talk about in Sugang's class. Tama means final, the end. And Jungsem is one of the words for bodhisattva. So we're talking about Maitreya, a bodhisattva, at the final moment of his samsara. So first of all, well, number two, I guess number one is the the experience of coming to the final end. Let's call it that. Then number two is Ganden Lashuk. So Ganden is one of those paradises. And Shuk is an interesting word. So he's meditating in a Buddha paradise called Ganden. So remember that a Buddha's body in his own paradise, or their own paradise, I should say, is surrounded by high-level bodhisattvas and other Buddhas. So we can imagine that Maitreya is in meditation with a Buddha, with another person, a Buddha, in their paradise called Ganden, right? So he's there hanging out with this Buddha, which is kind of cool, right? And in his final moment, he's going to leave that emanation, because bodhisattvas develop as they advance through the levels, the bodhisattva levels. They develop this ability to emanate. And as they advance through the levels, they can emanate more and more of themselves. So he's meditating up there, and he's going to leave his emanation in Ganden. Ganden Lashuk. Ganden means it means bliss. having bliss. Den means to have. Ga is bliss. Ganden, the heaven of bliss. And shuk means to leave or to stay, which I know sounds like opposite, but you can leave your emanation there, which is in a sense staying. I hope that's not too confusing. So anyway, the Bodhisattva Maitreya has left an emanation of himself in Ganden paradise. And that's actually what this means. I'm sorry, I got confused there. I got all messed up. I have the story right, but I got the Tibetan mixed up. Shuk. Okay, let me back up. Shuk means to be in, like to be located in. So first, he is in Ganden paradise. Sorry. Bodhisattva Maitreya is in Buddha paradise, Ganden, the paradise of another Buddha, and he's meditating. That's where he is. Then number 2 is that he leaves the emanation there in that place, I guess you could say. In that is what it literally says, but it's talking about Ganden. And the Trulpa, remember we had this word before, which means an emanation. And then this is the word that means to leave it. And then next, Okmin la chuka ngundudse. This means that he, this is very interesting word. So this is the word Okmin, which means literally, ok means below, and min means not below, meaning below none, right? Meaning the highest. So that's the name of the paradise, Akanista or Akanishta in Sanskrit. That's the name of his paradise. That's the name of the paradise that each one of us will have when we become fully enlightened. They all are named Okmin, and they're all distinct to us. It's not that we all go to one Okmin. It's that there will be countless Okmins. Okay, Chuka. So this is, we don't say he creates his Buddha paradise. We say he makes manifest. He actualizes. Mundudse. Because okay, sorry. The whole phrase, then we have the chuku, there's the chuku. So it's not just that he's manifesting a Buddha paradise, he's manifesting his chuku, his dharmakaya, his body. Remember when we talked about the 4 bodies of an enlightened being. This is one of the four bodies, if we talk about four. If we talk about two, it's one of the two, Dharmakaya. It is two different things, right? The mind of an enlightened being and the emptiness of all the bodies of an enlightened being. So it has, you could say, two parts. One part is a changing thing. The mind changes in every moment, right? As it has objects. Emptiness is an unchanging thing. Emptiness does not change moment by moment or any period of time. So when you have something, this is something that Dharmakirti Dignaga talked about, that when you have something that is changing and unchanging, you call it unchanging. If something has a part that is changing and a part that is unchanging, you call that thing unchanging. So you can't like produce the Dharmakaya in a Buddha paradise. You manifest it there. So it's just using a word that would sort of indicate that it's not that your mind goes there, travels there, right? Your mind doesn't change to get there. Your mind, your Dharmakaya, your fully enlightened, totally enlightened mind, manifests in Okmin. Then Maitreya, will re-enter his emanation in Okmin of the other Buddha. And then he's going to, and this all sounds very science fiction, then he's going to act out the other 12 deeds of an enlightened being. There are 12 deeds that we're not going to get into, but every Buddha does these things. It's like where they're enlightened, who their mother is, what they do. They act out, they pretend. The word is sultenpa. Where is it on my list? There it is. Sultenpa. They act out being born as a human being on a planet and growing up and experiencing, being the four experiences of being born, growing older, getting sick and dying. They're playing out this for others to see what suffering is, to see that it's possible to become enlightened. They play out the whole life of an enlightened being for others. So that's what Maitreya, those are the experiences that Maitreya will have becoming an enlightened being. There's another list that I want to very quickly go through so that we can get on to purification. There's another way of looking at what happens at that first moment of enlightenment. The first moment is you achieve Okumin paradise. And there are practices called Shingdak Chorwa, practices to bring about your Buddha paradise. And there are things like, for example, keeping your room clean and orderly. Practices like caring for a Dharma center or a stupa or a temple. These are the kinds of activities that they call the activities of building your Buddha paradise in a way, right? So again, first step, you get your own Okumin because you did these practices. Then the second thing they call Jine Chutok, which means the abbreviation is total amount of all things, which means you directly perceive the totality of all knowable things. You directly perceive the totality of all knowable things. Then the third is Yangdak Ta, absolute end or final limit. And that refers to you have reached the end of the third suffering. Of the three sufferings, there's the suffering of suffering, there's the suffering of change, and there's all pervasive suffering, which is basically the suffering of a conditioned existence, which are those four that I just mentioned: being born, growing old, getting sick, and dying. So you've come to the final end. No more being born, no more being sick, no more aging, no more death. Then fourth, shuku. You bring forth your Dharmakaya. Fifth is Samgepa. You become enlightened towards all Dharma, which means this is related to the second one about knowing the totality of all things. In this fifth one, being enlightened towards all Dharma means that you simultaneously perceive the emptiness of all things. So you see not only appearance, but you directly perceive emptiness. The emptinesses of those appearances at the same moment. And only a fully enlightened being can do that. Bodhisattvas are toggling very fast. They toggle very fast, but only a Buddha can see them both in the same moment. Sixth is Longku. And if you remember, this is the enjoyment body of a Buddha in their paradise. So this bag of bones transforms into a body of light in a Buddha paradise. Seven is Choke Gyu, which means infinite emanations. So where bodhisattvas as they advance through the levels, can emanate more and more instances, I guess you could say, of themselves. A fully enlightened being emanates countless numbers. Whoever has the karma to experience a Buddha, that occurs. You automatically, without thought, as a fully enlightened being, emanate to be with whoever has the seeds ripened to be with a fully enlightened being. So this can be the Buddha form of the Buddha with 112 marks and signs. It can be any of the other forms we talked about, like a bridge or a tree or an ordinary looking person, like that. So that's the other list of what happens as you move from your last moment of samsaric life into your first moment of fully enlightened life. There's a question on the homework about why doesn't the truth of suffering exist in a Buddha paradise? Apparently, and this, it just seems like it is a commonsensical sort of answer. Well, of course, there's no more suffering because they've left suffering. But apparently, there's great debate in the scriptures. So I must not understand the question deeply if I think it's a silly question. So some people say Oak Min is just another place. Oak Min, why isn't it the truth of suffering? Because every single place in our world is the truth of suffering, in the sense of being the reality of suffering. Every place here is total suffering. When we talk about the truth of suffering, we're talking about the truth of suffering of a place and the truth of suffering of beings. So apparently some people raise this question. So we have to think about, well, what are the causes for a suffering place? They're the same as the causes for a suffering experience. There's no difference. The causes of suffering are basically two: karma, negative emotions. Karma, what happened in the past, creates a lousy world now. Negative emotions, what we do now, that creates a lousy experience in the future. So, karma and mental afflictions. So, if we could get rid of our old karma and stop creating or stop having mental afflictions, we stop creating causes for a suffering place. What are the causes for a paradise? There are two. Munlam, which means prayer, Munlam, and it's a prayer like an aspiration. Like when I become Buddha, I want to be named Susie, and I want to be born on planet Earth, and I want to teach Tantra, and I'm going to be very tall with long blonde hair, and I'm going to be a Buddha who's always smiling. Like you're thinking of, you are aspiring what you want to look like, where you want to be, who you want to be. It's like it's almost like a mission statement, right? It's a prayer, an aspiration. So that's one of the causes of a Buddha paradise. The other is Gewa, which we know is virtue. So we're practicing virtuous activities, motivated by this prayer to become this Buddha. Those are the causes of paradise. So where is paradise? It's not really, I mean, we call it a place, but it is really just where you were when you transferred over from being a suffering being to being a fully enlightened being. It's not like we have to travel anywhere. And that's kind of interesting to think about. If we think about high-level bodhisattvas who they get to hang out with Buddhas in their Buddha paradise. So what does that mean? If a Buddha paradise is not in a place that you have to travel to, like, how does a bodhisattva, a high-level bodhisattva, how do they get to experience being in a Buddha paradise? Just something interesting to think about. Because they certainly don't like get on a train, or they don't like astral project somewhere. So how do we get rid of mental afflictions? We see emptiness. We understand emptiness. Like the Bodhisattva Supama, we practice applying the wisdom that results from having seen emptiness directly. And we use what they call shishin, which if you took the course on meditation, this may be familiar to you. It means awareness. So you have this awareness of wisdom as you go through your experiences. And that's how you get rid of mental afflictions. We talked about that at the beginning of the class. And then to get rid of negative karmas. So this collection of karmas that we have, we want to destroy the negative ones or make them impotent. Make it so that they will not ripen into a negative experience, a suffering place. So these four forces, and they come from a sutra called the four. I didn't write down the name. Well, here's the Tibetan. Chushi Tempedo. It's the sutra teaching the four forces, basically. Chushi. So the first of the four forces, and you do these in order. I mean, the very first, I guess, step 0 is you think about the karma that you want to purify. The more specific you are in identifying what it is you want to purify, the more powerful this act will be. We learned about this in the course on karma, that the more specific we are about anything we do, the more intentional and specific we are, the more powerful our actions are. So when we're doing purification practice, think about like, okay, I yelled at my friend, and here's my friend's name is Joyce, and the words that I said were this, and I yelled, and she started crying, and I want to purify having done that. So you think about that whole the action you did, so it's clear in your mind what your mind was doing. So the first step in the four forces purification, the first step is Tengito, which is the foundation force, which refers to taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. It's what we did at the beginning, or you may have joined in the prayers we did at the beginning, Sangye Chudan Soki Chuknam La. We do those prayers to take refuge, to realize the protection of the Buddhist teachings. They're the only things that can protect us. Is understanding that things are empty of existing from their own side, and that everything comes from ripening of seeds that I planted in the past by things that I thought and did and said. So that's the only thing we can rely on in getting out, and that's what this is all about. And then in bodhicitta, may I become a totally enlightened being in order to benefit all living beings. You want to fulfill the wishes of others, not just your own wishes. You want everyone to experience bliss. You want no one to suffer anymore, not just yourself. So the second one of the four forces is called Nampar Sun Jimpeto. And I've got 1 minute to finish this. I'm going to go 5 minutes over, and I deeply apologize to the live translators and to you as attendants for taking more time than you agreed to give me. But I'm just going to do it, and I'm sorry. I will purify it later. Okay, the second force is called Nampar Sun Jinpe Top, and that means literally the force of destruction. The force of destruction. This is what actually destroys the deed. Another way this force is called is intelligent regret. Intelligent regret. And what this means is that you go through that particular act you did. You understand clearly that by having done this act, you planted the seeds for not only a similar experience in the future, but one that's going to be more painful because karma grows. So you know, this is not going to be pleasant. It's like when, I think we talked about this before in this class, or maybe it was the karma class, when, anyway, that's too long of a story. But if you just, for example, mistakenly took a poisonous substance and you realize it, at that moment you realize you've just created the end of your life or a lot of suffering. So without emotion, without like feeling guilty, without beating yourself up about it, oh, I'm such a bad person. No, that's not helpful. What is helpful is, I did this act. It caused harm to someone else. I'm going to experience similar harm in the future. And to have regret. I regret that I've done that. So that's intelligent regret. Then the third is called Nyepe Lendarndokpe To, Larndokpe. Heavy prenasals there, for those of you studying Tibetan. And this is called the force of restraint. This is where you keep yourself from doing it again. You refrain from, you restrain yourself. Like at the beginning, you're like a wild horse, and that has to be restrained. Your mind is like that. And the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes, the more control you can have. But in an act of purification, again, specificity is important. If what you did was something that is a habit for you, like let's say yelling at your computer because the internet went out, so you yell at your computer. If that's still creating a negative karma in your mind, it's not a particularly horrid one because it's not another person, but it's still you've got anger in your mind, and that's dangerous. So if that's a habit for you to yell at your computer when things don't work the way you expect, then at this step of the practice, you wouldn't say, that's it, I'm never yelling at my computer again. Because, I don't know, this is my confession to you, I yell at my computer. I would probably do it the next time there's a storm and the internet goes out. You know, so you wouldn't say, oh, that's it, I'm never getting angry at my computer again. You'd say, I mean, if it's a really bad one, if you do it a lot, then you'd say, okay, for the next 20 minutes, I'm not going to yell at my computer. After I get up after this practice, 20 minutes. And then for 20 minutes after you do this practice, you just watch very carefully and you be very mindful. Okay, I'm not yelling. You can even like do that to yourself. I'm not yelling. I'm not yelling. I'm keeping my promise. Yay, I'm creating good seeds by not yelling. Yay, I dedicate those seeds to be able to not yell ever again sometime in the future when I can do that. And then 20 minutes is up. You can kind of relax a little because, you have to do your work. You have to eat. You have to interact with other people. But for 20 minutes, you restrained yourself. So you pick some period of time that you feel comfortable you can keep, because you don't want to say, oh, I'm never going to do this again, when this is a strong habit, you're going to do this again. That's lying, and that serves no positive purpose whatsoever. You're just creating negative karma by lying to yourself. You really can't lie to yourself. But anyway, that's the third of the four forces. The fourth one, Nyempo Kuntu Chupe Top. That's called the force of the antidote. And remember, we talked at the very beginning of class about the ultimate antidote. But let me just say at this point that there are two kinds of antidotes. There's a symbolic antidote and an actual antidote. A symbolic antidote would be something like, so you get angry at your computer a lot because it doesn't do what you thought it would do. So as an antidote, as a makeup activity, as something you can do that will create positive seeds that counter the negative seeds you had created. So you do something similar but opposite. So you, like, maybe I'm going to help my nephew be patient when his whatever gaming program, I don't know what current gaming programs are, but when he plays with his game, he often yells if he doesn't win. So I'm gonna help my nephew be more patient when he's playing his game. I'm going to teach my nephew patience. And, it may take a long time. And you do that antidote. That's a symbolic antidote. It's planting positive seeds. But the ultimate antidote is emptiness. Meditation on emptiness. Is the ultimate antidote, because emptiness is the only way to completely remove mental afflictions, karmic seeds. That is the only way. Very last thing, which has two parts. If the purification is, let me state that a different way. Signs that a purification is being effective is that you'll have a sudden, sort of unexplained, like a sudden strong headache, or some sort of suffering that happens strong, and it like it happens strong and it ends. So, like, for example, I did a 3-month purification retreat some decades ago. And when I came out, someone stole my car as soon as I got home. I lived in a city in which cars were never recovered. Like the cops said, we can't find it. We'll never find it. But anyway, they stole my car, and then the cops found it. 3 days later and returned it to me. So I had this strong ripening of a negativity, a suffering, because how am I going to get to work? La, la, la. And there were Buddhist texts inside there. Oh, no. And then it was returned with the Buddhist texts still inside. So you'll have some sort of sign like that. Related to that, there is at the end of the reading, it says, and I promise this is fast. The Buddha says, "O Subhuti, any son or daughter of noble family who takes up a sutra like this, or holds it, or reads it, or comprehends it fully, will suffer. They will suffer intensely." So that sounds a little scary, right? I don't want to suffer intensely. Put this down. I'm dropping the course. Forget about it. No. That intensity is like that moment of a headache, of having the car stolen, of it's purifying negativities. This sutra, because it contains the key for us being able to end being reborn over and over and over and over, helplessly being forced to experience suffering, forced by our karma, being in this cycle. This sutra gives us the key to get out. Just contemplating it, just thinking about it, just for a moment, stepping outside the circle to say, what's going on? Why is it I'm suffering over and over? What is it I could do to stop it? Just questioning creates extremely powerful positive seeds and purifies negative seeds. So I hope you all have the tiniest of headaches. May they be quick and very small. And please, 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 please don't forget to dedicate being here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. Thank you, live translators. I know I talked very fast today and used a lot of slang. My apologies. Thank you. And we'll dedicate, remember. Thank you, Geshe Michael. And I will see you on Wednesday next week.
Thank you so much, dear teacher. Please stay.
Thank you so much, teacher. And
Thank you so much, teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and Utpala.
so much.
Please stay.
Okay, see you next week.
Thank